Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's Securosys Bring Your Own Key webinar. My name is Rob Olivieri and Head Business Development at Securosys, and I have with me Reto Stoible. Reto is heading the product management and will guide you through the session today.
Hi, everybody. Also a warm welcome from my side. In this webinar today, I will be explaining why it is so important to be able to bring and manage your own keys. I will start with the story behind BYOK, Bring Your Own Key, and what it solves. Actually, it's an introduction I saw by Jamie Wright, which I found very illustrative. So thank you for this great idea. Then I will show the environment and procedures you have to follow to use BYOK with Securosys products, CloudsHSM or on-prem HSM. And at the end, of course, we will have time to go through your questions. Okay. To dive into this topic, imagine the following scenario. Olivia, she's the Chief Information Security Officer of a large international bank. Her job is it to keep her customers' data safe. Over time, the bank is transforming into a technology company, as we know from daily experience. Her task is to keep their customer data secure and in compliance with industry regulations, no matter what the technology the company adopts. Currently, all her data exists in on-premises data center. Historically, this has given us some pretty key advantages when it comes to data protection, because all lives in hardware, in buildings she owns and manages. She can be absolutely certain about how this data is handled. Ultimately, as a CISO, she takes responsibility not only for her customers' data, but also the processes around how data is handled. To keep the data even more secure, she can use encryption wherever appropriate. With encryption in place, the impact in case that data gets lost will be dramatically reduced. Without the keys to this data, they are of no use to anybody. But now, the technology owners of her business are pushing to adopt to the public cloud. This introduces a new, unique challenge to her. She has to secure customers' data without having total control over how customers' data is handled. She has now to conform to what public cloud providers call a shared responsibility model. Well, a shared responsibility model looks something like this. You probably have heard about it. What the business really cares about is the top layer of this diagram. That's the business logic. This is how we address the markets, how a company differentiates itself from the competition, and most importantly, how a company generates revenue. Everything below that, in the gray area, is just an enabler. The capabilities and efficiencies within these enablers determine how agile we are in the market. I think we all agree that we don't want to become experts in each area of this diagram just to build good applications. So think about the following. Our organization doesn't need to become the best in the world, for example, in server hardware, to become a market leader in banking. If you are able to consume the underlying resources as commodities, that let us divert far more resources in building great software. Then we can let someone who has become expert in managing servers take care of that for us. This is really the origin story of the public cloud. Amazon, for example, owns a platform where we have access to on-demand server hardware. Naturally, as these cloud offerings have matured, they began to offer more and more services. Now, you don't need to know how to build a globally always available network just to deliver a great banking experience. You can leverage companies who have already proven to be good at that, and you can consume it from that as a service. As a bank, you don't want to have to pay the bill for a team of operating system experts just to run your application. Your resources are far better utilized by focusing on building great user experience for your customers. Then we get there where we are today, where almost every part of the IT infrastructure is available to us as a service. This allows us to divert far more of our resources than previously possible to the part of our business that really makes the difference to our business. The efficiency and quality advantages of a shared responsible model are the reason why the adoption rate of public cloud is increasing year by year. But now there is one person that this doesn't help, and that's Olivia, our CISO. Olivia is now faced with the problem how to keep her customers' data secure, even though she has no longer control over where it is stored. So the question pops up, how do we get organization like Olivia's in a position to exert the same level of control around her customer data, especially for an industry that requires a highly regulated environment? The solution we have to come up with is some mechanism where Olivia can generate the keys in her own environment and then securely distribute copies of the keys out to the public cloud. Fortunately, the public cloud providers have already come up with a solution to this. This is called the bring your own key method. Depending on what cloud provider you might call this method slightly different. Okay, what does bring your own key solve? In general terms, there are 4 things we can achieve by using bring your own key. First, your industry might require you to be able to deliver encryption keys with a particular level of randomness, or let's say entropy. This randomness might have to come from a hardware device. Second, you might have to contain with the idea that one day you might have to remove yourself completely from that cloud. And if you do that, you must be able to take all encryption keys with you. Third, You might have to build in your own ability in disaster recovery processes that is supplement to the cloud provider processes. To do so, you have to have your keys outside the cloud provider's infrastructure. And fourth, in certain cases, you might have the technical use case that require some part of your encryption keys to be available both in the public cloud or in your on-prem data center. Okay, before we go on, I think now it's time for a little poll regarding the BYOK deployment. The first question I would like to ask is, how is the status of your BYOK adoption? Are you using it already? Do you consider it? Or are you following this webinar just to get some additional information? All right. Okay, I see some of you are already using it. Some of you are considering using it, but the large majority is getting some additional information about this concept. Great. And the second question I would like to put out is, what is the cloud provider strategy you're most interested of? All right. So I see a vast majority for Azure, followed by AWS and Google. If I look at the statistics of cloud adoption, what I see is AWS and Azure are widely used, followed by Google. Nobody is considering Alibaba, but there are some considering some different environment. I'm glad to hear that response, because I've planned to show you the integration steps and the procedures with Azure in the following slides. Well then, I will explain you a bit more about the infrastructure you need to bring your own key. On all the hyperscalers like Google, AWS, or Azure, the certificates, keys, secrets, they are always stored in some kind of, let's call it, vault. In Azure, for example, this is the Azure Key Vault. In this vault, the certificates, keys, and secrets of the different Azure services are stored. By default, these keys are generated and managed in the Key Vault automatically. The default keys are called Microsoft Managed Keys, or sometimes you find this abbreviated as MMS. The keys are used to protect data at rest of the various Azure services, as mentioned. To meet regulatory or compliance obligations from controlling the root keys, it is possible to set up customer keys, which are based on bring your own keys. In the bring your own key specifications, this key is generated outside of Azure Key Vault by the customer himself and is then imported securely to Azure Key Vault. So, where does CloudsHSM or on-prem Primus HSM fit into this scenario? CloudsHSM or on-prem Primus HSM give you a centralized place where you can operate and store your key material. As I'm responsible for generating my key myself, I can use the methods already approved by my industry. CloudsHSM or Primus HSM can be used directly to deliver bring your own keys to the cloud provider. All cryptographic functions are available over APIs, and if required, you can pass randomness for your evaluation by statistical tests. In some cases, it might be beneficial also to use and integrate the root key store or the key store provided by CloudsHSM or Primus HSM through key management systems like HashiCorp Vault, like BYOK and others. It eases the way of interworking with the keys and provides automation which simplify the key management, lifecycle, rotation, revocation issues. In both cases, the generation of the keys remain under your control. Now let's have a look at the workflow to import directly BYOKs to Azure Key Vault. We have based our example on Azure because of the high adoption rate, as we also saw in the polls. And especially in regulated industries, but the workflow applies similarly to other cloud providers. Okay, first of all, you have to prepare your Azure environment. On one side, you have to set up an Azure workplace with the Azure CLI installed. On the other side, you have to enable Key Vault Premium on Azure, which is recommended for bring your own key purposes. And then for the interaction with the on-prem Primus HSM or CloudsHSM, you have to set up a computer with the Java runtime environment and the Securosys Primus bring your own key tool. On your HSM or CloudsHSM partition, you have to allow key export to be able to provide a key then from the HSM to Azure Key Vault during the procedure. With Primus HSM, this can be set per partition. After the bring your own key procedure, you can disable key export at any time. So then, on your HSM client, you're gonna set up the bring your own key tool, which allows you then to connect up to the HSM or HSM partition in CloudsHSM with the relevant credentials. As soon as you have your base setup done, you go to Azure and you generate the wrapping key. This wrapping key is used to securely transport then the bring your own key from HSM to Key Vault. This wrapping key, also called the key encryption key, is an RSA key pair of either 2048 bits, 3072 or 4096 bits. When the CAC is created, you're going to download the public key as a PAM file. And you transfer it over to the HSM client to be used when you run the BYOK tool. The private part of the CAC always remains in the Azure Key Vault. Now, you have this wrapping key available on your HSM client. When you're ready with that, you create by command with the BYOK tool the BYOK file. This command actually generates a BYOK key. They also call it a target key, and automatically encrypts it with the provided key encryption key, encrypted by the public part of that key pair. So the BYOK file holds by the CAC encrypted BYOK key, so we can securely transport the BYOK key to Key Vault. Sounds a bit complicated, but basically by that, you only are able to unpack that key in Azure Key Vault. The BYOK key always remains securely stored on the HSM for future uses. Good. Now we have this BYOK file on the HSM client. We hand it over to the Azure admin computer and transfer it over to Key Vault. By the command of importing the BYOK file to the Azure Key Vault, the BYOK file will be unwrapped by the CAC private key hold on the Key Vault, and after that, the BYOK key will be available for future usage in Azure. All right, now that the BYOK key is available in the vault of the cloud provider, these keys can be used. Instead of using the internally generated Microsoft managed keys, the BYOK keys are used as customer managed keys to protect different services. Copy of it always remains outside of the cloud provider in the safe harbor of Primus HSM or CloudsHSM. BYOK keys are supported in services like SharePoint Online, Microsoft 365 for data at rest encryption. It can be used for customer managed keys with Microsoft Information Protection, Azure SQL Always Encrypted, which is a sort of transparent data encryption, or simply for Azure Disk Encryption, and of course other services and use cases. Please note that certain preparatory actions have to be followed when deploying BYOK to be able to exit from the cloud provider at a later date. For the various services, Microsoft services, there are a lot of description and documentation available on their knowledge base. The whole procedure, which I just showed, is also documented as a step-by-step guide, as an application note. This application note can easily be found and downloaded from our support portal. Now a little breakout or side note. Even though this is not the topic of today's webinar and probably would break the time frame to dive into it deeper, some of you might consider for highly sensitive data to go even one step further and to use double key encryption in addition to customer key and bring your own key. Double key encryption encrypts certain data with a second key, which is held outside of the cloud provider in Primus HSM or CloudsHSM, and which gives an additional level of protection. If you need more information on the double key encryption, please check it out on our website or just contact us. All right. So what could we learn today? How this works with CloudsHSM and Primus HSM. Well, we have seen in some way that the keys are generated outside of a cloud provider in Primus HSM. HSM, which is certified by FIPS, by common criteria. And with our services and products, you have the full cryptographic API available. And you're able to take randomness samples at your discretion and analyze it. The original copy, we have learned, always remains in the HSM, in the custody, and under your control. We also have seen that considering the prerequisites during the setup, an exit from the cloud providers is possible, so with bring your own keys at any time. And after that, the key material can be deleted completely from the public cloud provider and the data can be used onwards. And yes, you can use either CloudsHSM or on-prem Primus HSM to work with your public cloud infrastructure or your on-prem infrastructure. They are completely agnostic and can be used very well in hybrid scenarios. Okay, this for BYOK, and this brings us to the questions and answer section. Let's check with Roberto what came in, and if you wish, just put your question in the Q&A of this webinar.